Is the YouTube working?
Alan, can you confirm when the YouTube's...
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this annual meeting of the full council. I'm Councillor Chris Brown, Mayor of Tunbridge and Malling and Chair of the Council. Your attention is drawn to agenda item 1, which sets out the guidance on how meetings will be conducted, including the ground rules. For the benefits of those who may be observing proceedings on our YouTube channel, members and officers will introduce themselves when invited to speak. For members' attention, we've had a number of supplements published today related to appointments, and these are available on your iPads. So we'll move on to agenda item 2, which is the election of Mayor, the municipal year 2026 to 2027. But before that, could I just ask the Deputy Lieutenant, Louise Bryant, to say a few words, please? Let's press the button.
Just to say thank you very much for inviting me to this special event this evening. On behalf of the Lord Lieutenant, I just want to thank you, and also as actually a resident of Tunbridge and Malling, to thank all of you for all the hard work that you put in during the year, but particularly want to say thank you to the Mayor, who I know, seeing his diary every week, how very busy he has been and how much of contribution he's made, and to his family as well, who also have to sacrifice time. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and I look forward to the next year working with the new Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, can I have a nomination and a seconder for the new Mayor? Councillor Harman, please.
Thanks, Your Worship. I would like to nominate my fellow ward member, former cabinet member and current deputy mayor for the upcoming mayoral position. I think we all know how hard Kim has worked over the years, especially in her role as cabinet and deputising for Chris over the last year. And I would hope that everybody would get behind me and unanimously elect him.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Before I do say this, can I just use this opportunity to say how excellent it is to have Martin Coffin back in the chamber with us. So. I would like to second the nomination for Kim Tanner as Mayor for the 2026-27 municipal year. Kim, as Dan has said, is an extraordinarily hard-working councillor, both for her residence here on Kings Hill and also in many of the roles that she's held during her term of office. I think Kim will do a tremendous job, and I can't think of anyone else who will be able to pull off all of the events that have been put on our desk in front of us. And given that, I am very, very happy to endorse the nomination of Kim Tanner. Thank you.
Do we have any other members, or should we just proceed to the vote? Okay, all those in favour? I think that's unanimous. So congratulations, Kim.
Members, the Council accepts the nomination proposed and confirms that Councillor Kim Tanner is appointed as Mayor for the municipal year 2026-27.
Kim Tanner, having been appointed to the office of Mayor for Tunbridge and Malling Borough Council, declare that I will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of this role to the best of my judgment and ability.
Members, this declaration was made and subscribed before me, proper officer of the Council.
Okay, so we move to the election of Deputy Mayor. Can I have a nomination, a leader of the council?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm the first person to say that to you. It gives me enormous pleasure to propose to Council the nomination of my ward colleague, Councillor Sarah Hudson, for Deputy Mayor for the 2026-27 municipal year. I have the great privilege of every day seeing how hard Sarah works for residents across our ward, how absolutely dedicated she is towards the well-being of everyone that she represents. And I have absolutely no doubt that she will be an enormous support for you, Your Worship, as you undertake your mayoral year. And it gives me great pleasure to nominate Councillor Sarah Hudson for the role Deputy Mayor for 2026-27. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder for that?
Thank you, Your Worship. I cannot but agree with Councillor Matt Bolton. Sarah works extremely hard. I don't know, she's like a human dynamo, this lady, but it's not without a slightly heavy heart, because as she goes to the front rank, we are going to lose the biggest purveyor of sweets to the back row in this chamber. But she will be an absolute brilliant support for you, and no doubt she will go on to make a magnificent mayor. So I can't recommend her highly enough. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Does anybody else wish to speak? Can we have a show of hands for the nomination? For those in favour? The vote's carried. So, the council accepts the nomination proposed and confirms that Councillor Sarah Hudson is appointed as Deputy Mayor for the municipal year 2026-2027. Thank you.
I, Sarah Ann Hudson, having been elected to the office of Deputy Mayor of the Tunbridge and Malling Borough Council, declare that I've taken that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability.
This declaration was made and subscribed before me, the proper officer of the council.
I would like to invite a motion of thanks to our outgoing Mayor, Councillor Brown. And
Thanks, Your Worship. It's got a nice ring to it, actually, hasn't it? I'd like to propose a vote of thanks to our outgoing Mayor, Chris Brown. I think we all know Chris has worked fantastically hard over the last year and, has done an absolutely fantastic job. Chris, all I can say is now you can enjoy your retirement.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I agree with Dan. Absolutely, very happy to second the vote of thanks to Chris, and I'm sure, as Dan said, this will be the start of the enjoyments of his retirement. Although I know that Joe has got an awful lot of jobs around the house for him to do. Chris has had a tremendous year and a tremendous year as deputy to Steve Hammond the year before. It's perhaps no secret that Chris required a little bit of arm twisting to be interested in the role of mayor, but he did admit to me a few days ago that he'd thoroughly enjoyed the year and getting out across the borough and seeing the variety of different community groups and work that is done across Tunbridge and Morling. I think Chris has been a wonderful ambassador for the borough in his role. He's been a dedicated, really hard-working mayor, and I'd like to thank Chris and his family for all they've done over the last year. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Anita, I think you were first.
Thank you. The office of Mayor of Tunbridge and Morling has morphed over the years from an essentially networking role to one lending support and encouragement to all the voluntary bodies that throughout the borough. This week, I read that the Mayor has attended, that is Chris Brown, has attended the Tunbridge Lion Club prostrate screening event specifically to have his picture taken. This was held in the Angel Leisure Centre, Medway Hall. It does just demonstrate the old adage that a picture's worth 1,000 words. Turning up to such events lends a certain kudos and validation to the vitally important work that these volunteers do. The Mayor, representing the borough, complete with the chain of office, is seen as the chief volunteer, acknowledging the sterling work of both the male and female army of volunteers in the borough. Thanks for all the events you've attended, Chris, representing our borough. A good job done.
Lee.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to echo some of those comments. Just in case anybody wants to, I think the PSA testing is this Saturday, actually. So if anyone hasn't been tested, do come along. But I just wanted to say how lovely it's been to see Chris at various events. I mean, I'm based in Tunbridge, and it's been really nice that you've come along with such good grace and humour. And thank you for the coffee.
Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Oh.
Well, after the Lord Mayor show, most of it's been said, but I would say Chris has been a very good mayor because we've hardly noticed he's been there because things have run that smoothly. It's been very good. So I congratulate him on his year and I hope he's enjoyed it.
I would also like to offer my thanks to Chris for involving me so much this year in everything that's been going on for him. It's been such great training for me for my year ahead, and you're a hard act to follow, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you everybody for those kind words. I know we've got quite a busy agenda, so I'll keep this quite quick, but I'd just like to say a few key thank yous. Firstly, thank you to Kathy and the Mayor's office team for keeping us all on track. Just a brief anecdote. At Christmas, we were really busy and I hadn't sort of responded to a lot of emails. And Kathy was phoning me up saying, can you do this and can you do that? And I was saying, oh, maybe Kim can do this, maybe Kim can do that. And my wife was listening in the background, and when I put the phone down, she said, I don't know how she puts up with you. So thank you for putting up with me. You've been great. And to Alison as well, who keeps the agendas planned out and keeps us on track with full council meetings. Thank you, Alison. Your help's been superb. So thanks to everybody that came along to the Mayor's charity events over the year. We raised about, I think, £3,167 with the 4 events. There's going to be a lot more in the next year to go to, but thank you for everybody that's come along, and that money will be going to the British Heart Foundation and Hospice in the Weald. Thanks to my wife, Joanne, and my family for putting up with me. Although Jo hasn't been to all that many, Kim's been riding shotgun quite a lot of the time. But she has been buying raffle prizes and driving go-karts around Buckmore Park and serving drinks at the fireworks event that we had at the castle, even though we were trying to serve mulled wine, but the heater wasn't working properly, so that was a little bit complicated. So thank you, Joanne, for all of your hard work in keeping the home front going whilst I was out and about. Thanks to the scouts and guides, all the schools and charities and businesses in the borough for their amazing work with the communities, as well as the Tonbridge Lions, Tonbridge Rotary Club, and the community choirs that I've attended. It's a big long list of events that I've been to, but I think they're all really, really good. They're all in the mayoral calendar, so I won't repeat them all here now. But it's been a great year. Thanks to all of you members as well. I think you've done me a real favour. It's been a pleasure to chair the council over the last year. So thank you to all of you as well, and good luck, Kim.
Thank you, Chris. Can you come up to receive your past mayor's badge? And just before we move on to the official agenda, could I ask my consort to come up to receive his badge? Thank you. Okay, here we go. Any apologies for absence?
We've received apologies from councillors Bishop and Parry.
Agenda item 7 is to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of council held on the 21st of April 2026. Is that agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 8 is Mayor's announcements, and I would firstly like to welcome Martin back into Chamber. It's really good to see you back where you belong. Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to represent the borough as Mayor. I shall follow recent trends and won't be having a chaplain this year. I'm pleased to announce that my charities will be the Kent, Surrey, Sussex Air Ambulance, and we all know this is close to the heart of Councillor Williams, and I'd really like to support him in raising funds for them. We hear recently that it's costing £25,000 a month more for them to operate just because of the increase in fuel costs. So I think any help that we can give them will be gratefully appreciated. And Councillor Tunstall introduced me to the Scots Project in Tunbridge. This is a small charity that offers support and activities and accommodation for some of the adult residents in our borough with learning difficulties. When I visited, I was so taken by how happy everybody is there and how the good work is so obvious. And I'd really like to help them too. So you will have all received a list of my proposed events for the coming year, and I hope you'll all find time to support some of them. If all councillors and officers came to just one event, that would be amazing, but obviously I'd like to see you many more. The psychic evening is in the diary and you'll be getting details for that very soon. The clairvoyants tell me that it's going to be very popular. So if you and your friends and family want to join us, please get your tickets early. The quiz night's also in the diary. Perhaps start thinking about putting a team together. But equally, if you want to come on your own, Kathy and I will work to put the teams together. So thank you again. I really appreciate the opportunity to do this job. Moving on to agenda item 9, changes to the Constitution, implementation of planning committee reforms under the Planning and Infrastructure Act 2025. This report recommends changes to the Constitution to create a single planning committee together with a number of consequential changes arising out of the proposal. David?
You might not.
As a proposer, I'll go to Matt. Sorry, I'll come back to you, David.
No, I was going to propose recommendations as per the papers. Thank you.
And so Mike is to propose this, I believe. And a second.
You're a bit confused there. Who's proposing, who's seconding? I've always been a passionate advocate of our 3-committee system, but it's very likely the government's going to change this anyways. So if we do it now, we do it at our own speed in a measured manner. And there are benefits to doing this. It's going to do away with the problems we have had. It's going to do away with the problems we have had with cross-border applications. Right. I won't say all that again. Just that I think this is a good move and I'm happy to support or second the motion.
Mike is proposing, yeah. Okay. David.
Thank you. As members will not be at all surprised, I think, to hear that I'm against making this change now. Position is these regulations have only recently been subject to consultation, and the consultation period, I understand, ended last month. I further understand that the local government association actually was opposed to setting actual numbers on how many people should be on the committee, and said that it should be left up to local authorities and good practice. And as far as I know, the local government association represents us as well. Also, in the other direction, the Town and Country Planning Association recommended that the numbers on the committee should be less than is being proposed. And therefore, there's definitely uncertainty in relation to that. And it seems to me we shouldn't be preempting what the outcome of this consultation is. And therefore, I would propose that this matter be deferred until the regulations are made. I would add an additional thing. I'm a bit confused about the position concerning full council, because hitherto applications by this council have gone to full council, and I'm not sure from what's before us whether it's us proposing that shouldn't happen in future, or whether it's our interpretation of what the government proposes. And in addition to that, are we saying that if there was a borough-wide committee and that committee decided against the officer's advice to refuse an application which could be liable to incur the council in costs and so forth, that couldn't be referred to the full council to consider? The full council would have to just accept what that committee said and bear the consequences. But as I say, I will propose that this be deferred until the regulations are made.
Have you got a seconder for that, David? Lee? Adrian, to answer the questions, thank you.
In respect to the two questions posed by Councillor Thornywell, the first one relates to council applications being referred to the proposed single planning committee rather than full council. That is within our gift. It's not proposed by the government, so that's something that's entirely within our gift. In relation to the second point, which was about costs reports, at the moment members will be familiar with the process whereby a cost report is submitted to the relevant area planning committee, and if there is a significant or a risk of significant costs, then that matter is referred on to full council. Under the proposals in this report, there would still be that initial cost report that would be taken to the single planning committee, but there would be no further cost report after that point.
Thank you for that reply, and perhaps others will come to that later in the meeting.
Lee?
Yeah, I'd just like to explain why I'd like to support David on this. There's just a few things, a few loose ends in this proposal that worry me slightly. And I just think taking a bit more time to think those through, as we've got more time to think those through, and maybe not moving on this until we have to, might be sensible. As always, concerned that Tunbridge being unparished, it means we have no local input necessarily into these, apart from as individuals. I'm concerned that some of our recourse to have input into planning applications will now just be via the planning officer, and I'm concerned about how much time they might have to talk to us. There's a few other little bits in there that I just think bear a little bit more thought and discussion. And as Councillor Thornywell suggests, we don't have to do this yet. So I wonder if perhaps it might be wise to let a few, the quite big ones, come in via the current area planning committees that we know and love, and move to this if and when we have to, once the draft becomes a reality.
Thank you. I'll come to the leader.
Thank you very much. I understand why there's a desire to essentially defer this. I think I completely understand why, but I'll explain why I'll vote against this amendment that's been put forward. So the consultation referred to by Councillor Thornywell was actually the second consultation on this. The first consultation was on the principle, the second consultation was on draft regulations. It's very clear from the draft regulations, in fact it's at the very start of the draft regulations, that it is coming into force on the 30th of September 2026. So the government's intention on this is absolutely clear. And what has also been said by government is the reason that we've got this period of time is so that councils that are affected, like our own, have the ability in order to change their constitutions during this period that we've got. Now, given that we're at annual council this evening, and this is where we look at the political balance on committees, it's the appropriate time that we look at our constitution, that we look at how our constitution can be adapted to ensure we're acting within the law, as will be coming into force. And obviously, we've also got the Planning and Infrastructure Act 2026, which has now received royal assent before the prorogation of Parliament, that essentially sets the government's direction very clear. So the government has told us what is happening. The consultation was very technical in process, and I'm sure that we'll have seen the response that Mike agreed on that, in which we made the point again, like the Local Government Association, that it should be down to individual councils. But the question wasn't about the principle. That has been and gone. It's now down to the implementation. And I think it's only right that we do this tonight and that we're able to implement it while we consider our committee structure for the whole year ahead. Thank you very much.
Annie.
Thank you. First of all, I'm a little puzzled by all these words about political balance, which is important in most things, but I always thought planning was not meant to be political. The other thing I'm very worried about is what the planning decision for the Angel Centre. We have told residents that it's going to be a decision made by full council in July. And in fact, that was even said last night at Tunbridge Forum. Are we really saying that only 13 councillors are going to make such an important decision on behalf of the whole council? I think that's actually quite frightening, and I would like to ask, please, that whatever happens tonight, we do allow the full council to make the planning decision about the new Angel Centre. Thank you.
Mark, did you want to speak?
Thank you very much. I understand that the council is putting the council in a difficult position should these changes be implemented come the 30th of September, I think it is. Residents of our borough have seen planning applications decided by councillors who've got local knowledge for all these years, and these changes are, I believe, really regrettable, because responsibility has rested on every member's shoulders to do the best for their communities. And what we're seeing here is we're going to be seeing members of the council making decisions about localities and applications in parts of the borough that they know very little about, especially because we do have to go down that route of having political balance. I agree entirely with Councillor Hoskins that it is unacceptable to make a decision with only 30 members, and that is why I also support a deferral of this. As has been pointed out by Councillor Thornywell, the LGA doesn't support a limit on the number of members of planning committees, and a week is a short timing politics. And we're told that the government is going to be bringing these measures through. We don't know who the ministers are going to be by then. We don't even know who the Prime Minister could be by then. So I certainly think that we should be deferring this, and I will be supporting that. Thank you very much.
Adam, did you want to speak?
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of points I would make is that firstly, I think it's very unusual that Tunbridge and Morling has every single one of its councillors on one planning committee, or the 3 planning committees. Almost every other council, I think, in the country just has one. So it's just kind of aligning it with what every other council does. A number of times we have area planning committees cancelled from lack of business. Not really a good way of running things. It's it's a bit of a waste of officer time and things like that. So it's a sensible move to me. The Angel Centre planning decision is just the planning decision. It's not the decision to move ahead with it. That comes later in October, and that will be subject to full council scrutiny. So I don't really see that sort of matters much one way or another. The other thing I would say is that there'll be a mix of councillors on the new planning committee. So some will have knowledge of all of the areas of our borough. So you can expect them to understand the local context and bring that to the decisions they're making. And finally, it frees councillors up to kind of who aren't on the planning committee to represent their residents better without having to tiptoe around the issues of predetermination. So I think for me, it's the right way to do things, and it's just consistent with every other council, and it's just more efficient governance. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say I don't recall that many Area 1 planning meetings being cancelled. It doesn't seem to be a regular issue for Tunbridge. Also, I feel that the political balance is not as important as having a geographical balance, which seems to me make much more sense across a borough. And as Councillor Hoskins say, that in planning, it's not about political balance, and common sense surely suggests that we should be thinking about appointing experts for different areas rather than reflecting political balance in what is supposed to be a non-sort of political decision-making committee. I also just wanted to pick out the point that we might be doing something differently to the majority of councils, but we're actually seem to be doing it perhaps better. And our residents appreciate it. So rather than trying to sort of join everyone else in mediocrity, maybe we should be pleased that we are actually leading and doing something differently and doing it better rather than sort of scale ourselves down to be a worse version to match everyone else's mediocrity. Thank you.
Mike.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. 2 points. The thing that tipped me over the edge on this was the Bradbourne application. There was no way we could come to a sensible decision on that application, which was a cross-border application. So that is one good reason why we should have a single planning committee. The other thing that I particularly relish is if you're not on that planning committee, you can campaign, you can turn up, you can say, speak your mind, and nobody can accuse you of predetermination or anything else. And that is a real bonus. Yes, the ones who are on the planning committee don't have that freedom, but I'm sure there's a ward member or a friend who does. Thank you.
May I ask for a recorded vote, please, so we get the vote right?
We need a seconder for that. James Clokey. Just checking on procedures, but we can go straight to the vote now. On the amendment, yes. The amendment is to defer. Okay, we have the count. The motion to defer, those in favour were 17, those against were 24. There was one abstention, so the motion to defer has been lost. So we're now discussing the original motion. Annie?
To make another amendment, please. I would like to propose that the Angel Centre decision is heard by full council in July, because we have been telling people that's what's going to happen. I don't want to appear that I've been a liar. And it was said last night publicly at the Tunbridge Forum that it would be heard by full council in July. And I think we're kind of betraying people if we now do something different.
Do you have a seconder for that? Gary? Matt?
I'm afraid I'll be opposing this amendment too. There's a very simple reason for this. This is a constitutional change. We cannot write into our constitution that particular planning applications are treated differently to every other planning application that's determined by this council. There are other applications that are have been called in by. There have been other applications that have been called in by members to be debated by committee. Those members will have told members of the public that those applications may come to full council. That applies, for example, to the extension of the Bailey Bridge car park in Aylesford just as much. So it's absurd, truly absurd, that one council-owned planning application, as this amendment proposes, would be debated by full council, and another council application on council-owned land would be debated by the single planning committee. That's just ridiculous from a constitutional sense, and I would strongly encourage members to vote this down. Thank you.
Prepared to amend the proposal to say that all council applications should come to full council. Can't I amend my proposal?
No. Sorry, Franny.
Sure.
There's somewhere in the constitution. Sadly, even I'm not that.
On a point of order, it seems to me that if the seconder agrees, the proposal can be amended unless there's something we've changed the constitution in relation to that.
Prepared to amend my proposal so that it covers the point that Matt raised, so that it's not just that one application, but that we keep any council proposal should come to full council. Are you prepared to agree to that, Gary? Yeah.
Do you want to speak on that, Gary?
No, I just think it's common sense that that all applications relating to council land come to full council, as has been the case to date, and as we've been telling people in Tunbridge, and I'm sure other parts of the borough as well, where it applies, and that's the case. We're going to be in a difficult position having to backtrack on that. And people were reassured that it would be considered by the full council and not just a small group. And I think it's a retrograde step to go back on that.
Point of order 6.11, I think.
I think the relevant paragraph is actually 6.12 because this is because this was a motion moved without notice, and therefore to alter that motion you'd need the consent of both the seconder and the meeting, so it needs a vote of all members. Amend the amendment, yeah.
we're going to vote on whether Franny can amend the motion. Those in favour? Those against? How many abstentions? One. The motion to amend the motion has shown those in favour are 20, those against are 21, and there was one abstention. So the motion to amend the amendment is lost. So now we're discussing the motion.
I'd like to make another proposal, please. I would like to propose that all council applications in future should go through full council.
Just for clarity, in terms of amendments, we can only discuss one amendment at any one time. So members need to debate the amendment that was originally proposed, which was that the Angel Centre planning application is submitted to full council. Once that's been dispensed with, further amendments can be proposed at that point to the original motion.
Point of order. Can I just clarify? Was Councillor Hoskins attempting to withdraw the previous motion and submit a new motion, or was that the intent?
We need the dissent of the meeting to do that. So now we're going to vote on that original proposal to bring the Angel Centre to full council. So those in favour?
There's a point of order.
Sorry, Chair, can I just be clear? Councillor Hoskins, are you seeking to withdraw your motion or your amendment?
Withdraw my amendment, and I proposed an alternative one.
Okay, well,
but we've got to vote it down first, and then I can make another.
We have to have a vote first of all on whether whether it's permissible for you to withdraw your amendment to the motion. So if we deal with that, and then we can see if there are any further amendments at that point.
Drawn my motion.
It's 6.7 of the committee rules of procedure. So 6.17. It says that a member may withdraw a motion which they have moved with the consent of both the meeting and the seconder. So we'll need to obviously confirm with Councillor Bridge that he is in agreement with you withdrawing the motion, and then we'll need to put that to a vote.
Thank you.
Now This is absolutely ludicrous. Now, I would like to propose that all council applications in future should go through full council as they do at the moment.
Seconder.
Thank you very much. I will also be opposing this amendment for two reasons. The first reason was, well, the linked reasons actually. We made the decision that full council would determine applications on council-owned land because we had the area planning committee system. The downside of the area planning committee system, and perhaps one of the reasons why the government is seeking to bring and are bringing forward these changes, is because they don't reflect the political balance of the council. Now, I hear what's been said and completely understand that planning is essentially a quasi-judicial matter. It isn't a matter that is essentially forcing the political arena, because it's not a matter of political judgment when you determine a planning application. It's a matter of how that is determined against planning law. However, just like the licensing committee is politically balanced, the planning committee is politically balanced, so its membership is drawn from the overall political balance of the council. Now, since under a single planning committee we would have that in operation, because we would have one planning committee that that is politically balanced across the borough, it makes sense for those members who are trained in planning matters to determine all the planning applications in the borough. If we were to have a situation in which applications on council-owned land were considered by this council, then there would be a requirement for all members of the council to receive training in order to make that decision. Now, of course, that's what happens at the moment, but I am aware of certain members who simply don't join this council to sit on a planning committee. I mean, there are lots of reasons to be a councillor, not necessarily just to sit on a planning committee. And therefore, since we've got a structure, we'll have a structure that will be set up that is politically balanced across the council and capable of the 13 members on it, capable of taking those decisions in a quasi-judicial capacity using their training. It makes sense that that those members determine all applications, including applications on council-owned land. Thank you, Your Worship.
Mike.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have to disagree with the leader on this one. From pure point of transparency and financial probity, the Angel Centre application at least should come before the full council. And we're going to get accusations of doing deals behind closed doors if we give permission to our own application. And I think the greater transparency of a full council meeting is very important. Thank you.
Adam.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, I hear what's being said. No one is more invested in the Angel Centre project than I am. But we have to remember the vote on the planning application is about whether it complies with planning policy. It's not whether it's a good idea or it's not something, you know, a decision on the financial aspect of it. So it's purely, does the application comply with planning policy? And I think it needs to kind of be seen in that context. The important vote on that, the one that it's absolutely right for full council to take part in and have that oversight, is the one in October when we decide whether we want to go ahead with this or not. And those members who are interested in the planning application and want to say something about it can come along to that planning application meeting and can represent their residents to that. So I don't think it necessarily, you know, it needs to be decided by full council. It's just a regulatory function on the planning decision, and the important stuff, the important decision, will be brought before full council later in this year. Thank you. Oh, and the other thing I was going to say, at the last full council meeting, we had a decision on whether to install new boilers at Portwood because it was a council application. And I think in that context, you know, it's probably not that important for full council to decide everything we do in terms of planning application on council land. You know, it's not a good use of our time for the council to be looking at things like that. And amongst the Angel Centre and those, you know, bigger decisions, there's lots of, you know, uninteresting minor planning applications that we don't really need to take our time doing. So that's how I see it. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that this council was in support of the debate not hate motion, and I think the spirit of that, referring to Councillor Hoskins' ideas as ridiculous, is not a respectful way to speak to our colleagues. I also think that conflating the change to the Angel Centre with changes to a car park is not really a very rational argument in terms of suggesting they're of equal weight or impact to the people of Tunbridge and Morling. I think that it is important that a massive decision like the Angel Centre, which we have publicly committed to bringing to full council, it is important that we honour, well, personally to me, is that one sticks to one's word. And I do think that Councillor Hoskins is right, and I fully support her ideas. Thank you.
Mark.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to point out that some members of the council may not find planning to be the most enthralling part of their councillors' duties. However, in my experience as the chair of Area Planning Committee 1, I find that my committee is wholly engaged, and they have done a great job. And at no point have I seen anything there that's been politically motivated, and I don't recognise that in any of the other planning committees of the council either. I think I support a deferral of the changes to the constitution so that we can process the applications in the case of the Angel Centre, Bailey Bridge car park, and any other applications that are outstanding. If we've got others that are outstanding that we can process, and then eventually we get to the point. But I think there's a window of opportunity, and that allows the administration to honour the promises that it's made to the people of the borough, that this council will receive that application, and collectively as a council we will make a decision. To do otherwise, I suggest, is dishonourable. So I think we need to recognise the commitments that we have made, the promises that we've made to residents in this respect. And so that is I agree entirely with what's being proposed. But I think if we can make sure that those outstanding applications are grouped together and processed before we make the changes, that would be helpful.
Councillor Davis.
I very much go along with Councillor Mamet that we mustn't confuse the planning function with the overall assessment of the project. And to that end, we should be considering the planning committee, who will be our resident experts on planning, and can listen to people from the locality speaking at that meeting to decide on the planning issues and solely the planning issues. But the final decision on the Angel Centre will be taken by full council, considering not just the planning issues, but everything associated with the whole project. Thank you.
Lee. There's a question, really. Obviously, the current legislation that we're looking at is draft, but I understand that says that we can have no more than 13 in a planning committee. So I don't see how the full council can resolve itself into a planning committee, because there would be 44 people. So logically, it feels like once this becomes law, once it's not a draft anymore, or as Matt says, he thinks that actually it is going to become law and we're just being given this time to do it. But it does strike me that we do have this tiny, tiny window of opportunity. So even if we were tonight to agree that council-owned planning permission for council-owned lands would go to full council, we would have to change that anyway, I'm guessing, once the rules come in about only having 13, because we would not be able to resolve ourselves into a planning committee. But that does give us that window of opportunity just to get the Angel Centre done. And it wouldn't be a problem with all the other stuff then, because we'd have to change it again anyway. So it seems like there might be a nice little neat solution there that makes everybody happy, but who knows?
Robin.
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Athwell makes some sensible suggestions there. But I want to just bring it back to basics. In my view, this is going back to square one again. This is something that's being forced upon us eventually anyway. So in my view, that in the grand scheme of things, being on the front foot on this early on it makes sensible way forward. Going back to the Angel Centre, which seems to be the focus here, I think what residents will be looking at is that we're going to make the more important decision of spending millions of pounds on a new development in Tunbridge. That's the decision that they'll be looking at full council and full debate on in how we're spending a serious and significant amount of money. The actual planning application in the grand scheme of things is actually a small element of the whole development and something that will be decided on, as Adam has said, planning policy. And as Councillor Athwell says, if this is something that's going to be forced upon us and there's limited numbers that can be sitting on a single planning committee, then it's going to look a bit, in my view, having a kind of hybrid system just for one application in some ways doesn't feel quite right either. So I think we've really got to decide, are we going to do one thing or the other? And based on the fact that this is being forced upon us, I'd rather be on the front foot and get it organised tonight, really. Thank you.
Councillor Thorneyman.
At the start, I asked whether the proposals regarding full council were being forced on us by the government if this legislation is passed, and I was told they were our own proposals. Which is the correct answer?
At the moment, our constitution provides that applications for development submitted by the council go to full council for determination. So any proposal to change those is ours and not the government. The government haven't referenced at all, as far as I've seen in the consultation, a situation whereby a council takes applications submitted by themselves to full council for determination. I hope that clarifies it.
Councillor Bridge.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to go back to some of the comments made by previous speakers, Councillor Betts in particular. Yes, we appreciate that the final decision on the project will be made by full council in October, but there is a lot of interest in Tunbridge amongst residents in the planning application that's been submitted. There was a consultation a couple of months ago where many people got involved, came to the Angel Centre, had a look at the exhibition. They've had a look at the planning application online, and there have been loads of objections been submitted about it. And a lot of questions have been asked by residents and community groups about the application itself. And they've raised a number of issues that the Tunbridge Programme Board have been looking into and are putting together responses on. So it is a big issue for residents in Tunbridge, the planning application itself, which is why we believe we should honour the commitment that has been made, which is for the full council to adjudicate on it. Thank you.
Councillor Hickmott.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is obviously a massive planning application for a very, very expensive facility. And I don't really think that I'll be able to make a decision on spending all this money if the design is like an elephant's left foot. So you've got to look at it in the round. You can't just decide on it, oh, you can do it with how much we're going to spend on it, because that's not the way to determine whether this is the right thing for our borough or not. So I cannot understand why the reluctance to take this application at full council is being made, because it should go to full council. It affects all of us, and we live right at the other end of the borough to where this is, but it's still going to affect us. But we're interested in it and we want to make sure it comes out the right way. Thank you.
Chris.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. Just a brief one. I think the leader of the council and myself are the only two members of the council that were on a previous authority where we didn't have a single, or we did have a single planning committee. And when I came down here, I was quite surprised that I had to be on planning because I was used to going along to planning committees, not as a member of the planning committee, and be able to speak freely and campaign before you got there and predetermine it as much as you want because you're not the one taking that decision. So when I came down here and we had to think about predetermination, I found it quite restrictive. So I'm quite relaxed about it. It's been forced on us by the government anyway, and I found it quite refreshing actually to be able to say what you want about it, as long as you're not obviously not taking a decision. You can say and campaign as much as you want. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor. Sorry, you've spoken already, apparently. I've lost track of that.
I was gonna thank you for letting me come back.
Okay, so let's take a vote on, we'll have a recorded vote on.
Sorry, Council.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one point I'd like to pick up. On the documents, it states that the planning application considered by full council will be the 14th of the 7th, 2026. Why can't we just wait until then?
If we decide to go with this tonight, it comes into force immediately. So whichever proposal we agree with tonight, it will take immediate effect. So let's vote on the proposal to take all planning applications from the council to full council. Okay, we have a result. Those in favour of all council applications going to full council is 22. Against is 0 and abstain is 20. So that motion is carried. Bill?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I wonder if I could propose another motion. I think what I was concerned about is that we seem to have conflated a few things together. There are some things we're needing to do because the government might want us to do it at the 30th September, and some things that we've added in because we think it's, well, some people think it's the right thing to do. And one of the things that I'm concerned about is I think this would go through a lot better if we actually struck 15.24. And so if we got into a situation where a planning committee disagreed with the officers, it would come back to the full council. Now, I hear what Matt said about the fact of all this extra training. Well, I do think we have to think about the fact that we've all had our extra training. And so I don't think from the point of view of the time of this council until it ends, I don't think it would cause any problem at all. But I think it does actually lead a situation where if there is some kind of discourse between the planning committee and the officers, then it could be settled in full council meeting. I do hope that basically it does seem to me that the voting tonight seems to have been a little bit down party lines. And so I just wonder whether people would actually just break ranks perhaps a little bit and just look at this little bit of a concession and just allow basically a disagreement to be aired fully at full council. So I propose that basically that we strike the red ink in 15.24. Page 81, yeah.
If I could just clarify with Councillor Banks, I think what Councillor Banks is proposing is that the substantive part of the motion at point D, so this is paragraph 3.1D, is struck out. Is that correct?
It says, sorry, I was looking at 15.4 where basically it's, I think that the red ink is basically, well, the proposal is to allow a disagreement between the planning committee, or at the moment is a planning committee, 1, 2 or 3. If there is a disagreement, that eventually it would be settled basically by full council. So I thought that was covered in 15.4, but I'm happy to be corrected.
Yeah, so D.
So, yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So if you are proposing to amend the motion so as to strike out part D, then in effect what you are proposing is to negate that part of the motion, and amendments that seek to negate the motion aren't permitted because you can vote on the substantive part of the motion at that point and vote against it.
Mark.
Yeah, if this is a detail, so this what Councillor Banks is asking for is one element of the recommendation to be removed, but that doesn't negate the whole thing. This is it's an amendment. If this was a motion brought by a group, then I would say that was a point. If that was the sole business of the motion, but this is just a component part. Surely I really don't see that argument actually stands.
I think that given members will, I don't know if anybody wishes to propose this or not, but given there are 5 parts to the motion, it's perfectly permissible to vote on each part of that motion individually. And so an amendment which seeks to effectively strike out part of that motion is negating that element of the motion because it's a matter that members could vote on as part of the substantive motion.
Councillor Bolton.
I was simply going to say what Adrian said. In fact, I was going to ask the question that isn't the simple way just to vote against Part D, which I think is what Councillor Banks wants to do. Now, what we could do without making this more complex is vote on A, B, C, D and E individually. And I'm very happy to suggest to the chamber that we do that. You'll note I don't move that as an amendment to my motion at this point. I simply put that as something that is possible, and that way Councillor Banks can vote against D if he wishes to.
Is there a seconder for that? I think it would be better if we vote individually.
Since we seem to have exhausted potential amendments on this, and as the proposer of the motion and with Mike's agreement as the seconder of the motion, I would like to suggest that we vote on the motion as amended and that we take each vote individually on A, B, C, D and E.
Right.
Madam Mayor, now that we are on the amendment, we are on the substantive motion. I'd just like to give an ode to Area 1. Well, a few sentences. When I first was elected to the Borough Council and the privilege of representing Hillsborough, Area 1 was held in the council chamber at Tunbridge Castle, a long table with public all over the place in an L-shaped room, with the rooms panelled. And it was interesting when fully attended by councillors and the public. Jammed is one word I'd use. Members would sometimes, often debate 7 to 8 items per meeting. Former officers, a couple of less mentioned, Keith Nicholson, Lindsay Pearson, Neil Hewitt, who's still around, and more recently Emma Keefe. And on occasion, Madam Mayor, officers would bring along bricks and tiles so members could see what the materials being used for. Then we moved to the Angel Centre, the Riverside Lounge. And the first thing that was best, of course, was sound, provided by the late David Smith. We had a square table, plenty of room for the public, used to be able to seek clarification from members of the public. Terry from Kent County Council Highways used to attend quite often.
He's retired now.
Oh, I've just been told he's retired. He always had a bit of a grilling many times, and he stopped coming. And I have to just correct Councillor Cope. 1 year, 11 Area 1s were cancelled. We then moved over here, and I suppose the worst thing was that clarification was not allowed, but meetings could be followed on YouTube. Madam Mayor, so I'd like to bid a fond farewell to a trusty friend, Area 1. I thank you for your good and not so good times. And to the members of the Planning Committee, I'm sure you will all wish you well in your expanded deliberations. And I was going to ask Madam Mayor if I could add an F. And having just checked with a member of the future planning committee who thought Hildenborough was in Scotland, I wonder whether some cash could be found to get a minibus so that members of the planning committee could have a tour, so that those that live in Waldersade know where Hildenborough is, and maybe someone in Tunbridge could find out where Walderslade is. I so move that motion to offer members of that planning committee a chance for a trip around the borough. Thank you.
Sorry, I was waiting until the right minute because I think we're now debating the tiny little thing I just wanted to point out because I think E is around this. So if I look at the Members Planning Code of Good Practice on page 91, we're we're saying at E1.2, this code of good practice applies to councillors at all times when they're involved in the planning process. This includes when you are acting as a member of the planning committee. And then we've struck out taking part in a debate on a planning application in another development control matter in another area planning. So does that mean if I'm not on the planning committee, but I'm just talking in that planning committee, just as a member, but not as a member of that committee, I don't have to abide by the code of practice? It's a serious question. It's a serious question, and I wonder if we've got that tiny bit wrong, because that looks to me like you're telling me if I'm not on the planning committee, I don't have to worry about the code of practice. Just clarification.
If you'd like, yeah, I'm more than happy to answer that, Your Worship. That amendment was proposed, well, predicated on the basis that there would no longer be area planning committees. So if they don't exist, it would not be possible to.
Sorry, just to clarify, you're misunderstanding me. What I'm trying to say is, at the moment, it says the code of good practice only applies if I'm acting as a member of the planning committee. And because there's nothing in there now that talks about members who are talking at a planning committee, even if they're not a member of the planning committee, that makes me sound like I don't now have to abide by that code of practice. Before, you said I had to abide if I was a member of an area planning committee and if I was talking at an area planning committee that I wasn't a member of. So I was covered everywhere. Now you're saying I have to abide by it if I'm a member of a planning committee, but not if I'm not. Different. It is different.
So what you're proposing is that there should be.
I'm trying really hard not to propose anything. Trust me.
Well,
I'm just trying to say, I wonder if we've got that quite right. If you think we have, hurrah. If you haven't, then I think perhaps you need to decide to change it.
Well, I think, okay, well, thank you for that clarification. I think then what you're suggesting is in the second bullet point, rather than deleting all of it, it should say taking part in a debate on a planning application at the planning committee. Yes.
Okay, I think we should go down the list and Councillor Thornewell.
Like to vote and have it recorded that I voted against the whole thing. And I just want to say, I'm not going to propose anything. I just want to say some general words. I think the area planning committees on this council, since it was established back in 1974, have been a success. And I think, generally speaking, they have helped the public understand what is a difficult function of the council. And I think it is a fundamental mistake of the planning profession and the planning establishment to be against area planning committees. It was not just Tunbridge and Malling that had area planning committees. There were lots of area planning committees, and gradually, one by one, I say this, the planning profession don't like them and have got rid of them. Maidstone used to have area planning committees. It was interesting, I thought, that those gentlemen who came along and reviewed our procedures, I went home and looked at their authorities, and one of the ones who came here and said, questioning whether we should add area planning committees, in fact had a north and a south one in his own authority, but he didn't mention that, did he? Secondly, I want to say about this issue of fettering discretion. I've heard that throughout my political career about fears of fettering discretion. And the position is there has been not one single case during the lifetime of this authority that we have been taken to court or been called to task because members have fettered their discretion. It's a very rare thing. And I'm afraid that officers hold this like a club above our heads. And it's just overdone. I remember when I was leader of this council, I insisted on going to a synopsium about planning rules and fettering discretion. And what I'm saying now was confirmed there. There are very few cases nationally of this ever happening. It's right that people should be warned to act correctly, but it should not be used as a threat. Thirdly, I want to say what a mistake it is to establish planning committees based on political proportionality. We're always being told that planning is not political. Well, it will become so, because if you have an authority where the planning committee is consisting of one party having a majority, the public out there will see it as a political act, and the opposition will use that at election times. And that's what's going to happen, because that's how the political situation develops, isn't it? That's how campaigning carries on. And therefore, I think the Labour government, as well as the planning profession, are mistaken about this. And I also object to the idea that members of the council, any council, not this council, can go along to a planning committee and talk a load of rubbish that appeals to their electorate sitting in the seats, with a view to misleading those electors, thinking, oh, they've spoken up for the local area, and then the planning committee members do the complete opposite of what those residents want. And I repeat what I've said here before. Our political system is under threat because political parties, all of them, don't come up with the goods. And these changes will feed into that. Doesn't matter if they're Conservative, Liberal Democrat or Socialist, it will merely underline the public's lack of confidence in the planning system as a whole. And planning, lastly, we won't like this, planning is political, because political decisions are about making a decision balancing the various factors. And although it's set down in planning rules, it is still a political decision. It shouldn't be a party political decision, but it is a political decision as to whether we give priority to housing sites and forget everything else, and whether we ignore the objections on traffic grounds. They are all political decisions. Some of them are taken by the government, which is a party government. And therefore, I just want to say that I'm against the whole of this, and I've used up my time, sorry.
Thank you.
And I want my vote against the whole thing recorded.
Okay, let's bring agenda item 9 to a close. If we vote on clause A, which is to agree to the creation of a planning committee comprised of 13 members and politically balanced, to include the amendment, can we vote those in favour? Those against?
Your worship, can we, before we take the vote, can we request that our names are registered in the minutes of the meeting during these votes for members who wish to? Because I certainly would like to register my name against this.
We're just checking. We've started, so we need to carry on. But those against? Abstentions? Okay, for clause A, we have 4, 23, against 17 and 2 abstentions. So that is carried. We'll go to clause B, which is
Before we get, is it possible to, because this is a new vote on a separate part of the proposals? Same point, please.
will that be for B to E or just for B?
Or B and D, and yeah, and so, yeah, B, C, and D, yeah, and yeah, and to E.
Do you have a seconder for that, Mark? Stacey is the seconder. Right, we're voting on clause B to agree to the deletion of the 3 area planning committees. Those in favour? Those against? Okay, for clause B, it's 4, 23, against 17 and 2 abstentions. We'll move on to clause C, which is to agree to the consequential changes to the Constitution as set out paragraphs 4.10 of this report and at Annex 1. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? Okay, for clause C, we have 24 in favour, 16 against and 2 abstentions. So that is carried. Right, let's move on. Clause D is to agree to the amendments to Rule 15.24 of the Council and Committee Procedure Rules set out at paragraphs 4.14 to 4.16 of this report under Annex 1. Those in favour? Against? Abstentions? So for clause D, we have 23 in favour and 19 against. So that's carried.
Just before we take the vote on clause E, conscious of the previous amendment to the motion, which related to applications for planning permission submitted by the council, just like to clarify that whilst there are a number of further amendments to Members Planning Code of Good Practice proposed under E, it will obviously exclude the amendments to E 8.7 and E 8.8, which relate to applications submitted by the council, which there's already been a decision.
Wendy?
Have you taken account of the comments by Councillor Atwell about changing the wording in that good practice code?
It wasn't a proposal, it wasn't a motion.
Okay. I think it was actually a very valid point.
We'll look at it outside
Yeah,
of the meeting.
It was a very valid point.
We'll just vote on clause E. So those in favour? Those against? Okay, that's in favour 24, against 18. So I think we've come to the end of agenda item 9 and that is carried. Let's move on to agenda item 10. This report of the Deputy Chief Executive sets out the political balance arrangements for the Borough Council's committees. I propose option A, attached at page 105, which sets out the proposed political balance arrangements to reflect the introduction of a single planning committee.
I bring the supplementary paper, Chair, Worship, so I'm just trying to bring that up. Supplement 3, there was an alternative paper submitted, option A1, based on 111 seats, which is a slight modification to that in the papers before you tonight. The change, just to summarise, is that Labour would have a seat on Overview and Scrutiny Committee, but not on Licensing and Appeals. Liberal Democrats would then have 4 seats on Overview and Scrutiny and 4 seats on Licensing and Appeals. So it's option A1 is the alternative proposal.
Thank you, Adrian. So I propose Councillor Bolton seconds. Does anyone wish to speak, or can we just agree? Agreed. Agenda item 11 is the appointments to Cabinet. The Borough Council is asked to note the appointments made by the leader to the Cabinet and the portfolios they will hold. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Cabinet portfolios remain unchanged, with the exception of incorporating into the Cabinet portfolio for infrastructure and regeneration the water issues that are ongoing. Thank you.
Can we note that? Yes, please. Noted. Thank you. So, agenda item 12, appointment of committees. The council is asked to consider the establishment and composition of committees of the council for the next municipal year as set out in Annex 2. Does anyone wish to comment? Agreed.
One quick question. This might be this agenda item or the next one. I think setting out in Licensing and Appeals Committee, the extra seat is currently marked as vacancy. Is that the current up-to-date report? Do we do we need to amend to include that, or are we all good?
To propose as per the supplementary with the addition of Councillor Clokey to the Licensing Committee.
And I'll second that. Everyone in favour? Agreed. Wow, we're going like nobody's business now. Agenda item 13. Appointment of scrutiny select committees, panels and other member groups. The council is asked to consider the establishment and composition of scrutiny select committees, panels and other member groups for the next municipal year as set out on Annex 3. Wish to comment? Is that agreed? Agreed. Next, we have the appointments of chair and vice chair. The council is asked to consider appointments of chair and vice chair for the next municipal year as set out on Annex 4. Is that agreed? 15. Appointments of outside bodies. The council is asked to consider appointments to outside bodies for the next municipal year as set out on Annex 5, published as a supplementary report, supplementary 4. Is that agreed? Oh, okay, Mark.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. The given that we've had a change in the portfolios for our cabinet members, and Councillor Mehmet has now got responsibility with regard to water infrastructure. Wouldn't it make sense that Councillor Mehmet is also the council's representative on the Kent Flood Risk and Water Management Committee and the Southern Water Local Authority Stakeholder Board?
Councillor Borton.
In the last 12 months, I think I've been to one meeting of the Kent Flood Risk Management Committee. So it's not an onerous task, but I'm conscious that we've given Councillor Mehmet a more difficult task, which is to help solve the water problem. So thank you. I'm very glad for Councillor Hood's concern about Councillor Mehmet's workload, but I think we'll keep it as it is for the moment. I know that on both committees we can review it during the course of the year, as we do. And if his input and expertise, which is considerably more than mine on these issues, are required, I'll be the first to phone Councillor Mehmet. Thank you.
Councillor Hickmott.
Yes, corporate strategy priority areas. 2.2, formal appointments reflecting determined political balance arrangements, supports effective governance and decision making. I do not agree with your membership of the Snodland Partnership. I'm happy for Luke and Sue to be on there. But if they are the only ones that are on there, that will not be seen as politically balanced in Snodland. So therefore, I'm going to put myself forward as well.
Borton.
It has become necessary for this council to nominate Councillor Bell to the Snodland Partnership because the town council, of which Councillor Hickmott is a member, has removed Councillor Bell. So therefore, given Councillor Bell's experience and expertise and interest in this area, as well as Councillor Chapman's work for the community, I would propose that Councillor Chapman and Councillor Bell are our two nominations. Thank you.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Harman. Right. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agenda item 16. The council is asked to consider the appointment of substitute members for the next municipal year as set out in Annex 6. Councillor Hood first.
Thank you very much. Can I have an explanation as to why this council goes through this process of designating substitutes for these committees? Because it seems to me that it's pointlessly restrictive to have this, especially when you've got groups with a larger membership. So I'd actually say that the Conservative group is shooting itself in the foot because it's restricting the number of members that could possibly substitute in this respect. So I propose that we actually discontinue this practice. I think if we deleted 4.2 and 4.3, that would probably do the trick. I don't follow, other than planning committee, which if we're going to go down the route of the planning committee where you need to have certification or accreditation, then you need the additional training. But other than that, I don't really understand why we go through this process. Members of the county council are familiar with the system of substitution, which is far less complicated. We don't have this onerous restriction about who can and who can't attend. So I propose that we actually do away with this process.
Sir Borton.
A little confused about what the amendment here is. Is the amendment we do away with substitutes full stop? Or is the amendment that essentially any member can act as a substitute member? If it's second one, very happy to go along with it. So that's fine with us. Fine with me, I should say.
I can't remember the exact date, but our rules for substitution were agreed by full council, I think 2023 or 22. I can't remember the exact date when that was. But I think there's probably a few nuances here that we'd need to pick up part of this proposal. Perhaps if I may suggest, Your Worship, that we bring back a paper revisiting the rules of substitution for you to take a good look at that, and then we can see if there are any nuances that we need to advise you of, rather than do it tonight and then find out later that there's something that we've missed. So we can do that for the next full council meeting in July, if that meets with your approval.
So if I make a recommendation to defer until that meeting, yeah.
Councillor Bolton.
If I may, can I suggest we approve the substitutes as per the papers tonight, but that we add an additional recommendation, which is that a paper be brought back to the next meeting of full council to essentially determine whether the limit on substitutions per committee, which is currently 5 per group, be lifted to an unlimited number. I can see Adrian nodding his head, so I'm assuming that's
sorry.
acceptable.
Point of order. This has been voted on already. This was just voted by general affirmation.
I think we got to agenda item 16, and is there a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Coffey. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agenda item 17. Members are asked to confirm the scheme of delegations as set out on pages 143 to 145 of the Constitution, Part 3, Responsibilities, and is available via the website link set out in paragraph 3.1, be confirmed, and the recent change to Cabinet Member portfolio be noted. I propose that the scheme be noted, or agreed and received and adopted. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hudson. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agenda item 19. Oh, well, 18, sorry. Right, programme of meetings 2026 to 27. The council is asked to adopt the programme of meetings as set out in the report of the Director of Central Services. Is that agreed? Oh, sorry. And it's option B. Is that agreed? Agenda item 19 is something. Okay. Agenda item 19, we have a motion that's submitted under Council Procedure Rule 5.27, and it's motion 26/001, introduction of Article 4 directions. A notice of motion has been submitted by Councillor Cope and Councillor Pilgrim in relation to the introduction of Article 4 directions. Councillor Cope is invited to propose and speak to this motion, but with a time limit of 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'd just like to, am I allowed to start now? Okay, sorry. I'd just like to say I'm not planning to speak for the entire 5 minutes, but I am bringing this to full council on behalf of residents across Tunbridge and Morling who are increasingly concerned about the loss of family housing and the impact that unmanaged HMOs conversions can have. This motion is not about opposing shared housing or people who rely on it. It's about restoring local democratic control over how housing changes happen in our borough. We believe that this is in the best interests of our residents. That's why we're calling for an Article 4 direction across the whole of the borough so that every proposed conversion from a family home to an HMO is properly assessed with the local impacts, the community voice taken into account, and long-term housing need at the heart of our decision making. Thank you.
The seconder is Councillor Pilgrim.
Thank you. I'll reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Councillor Borton.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Now, in advance of this meeting, I looked at the motion and would like to put forward an amendment. I believe there are hard copies to be circulated. What I shall do just while they're being circulated is just speak to that in the interest of time, Your Worship. So I'm very grateful to Councillor Cope for her motion. Perhaps it comes as a little bit of a surprise given the comments that Councillor Cope said at the last meeting. Now, yesterday, this council published the agenda for the Housing and Planning Scrutiny Select Committee meeting, which is taking place on Tuesday next week. And one of the recommendations that has come forward in this motion has been to ask Cabinet to make arrangements to compile the relevant evidence for the removal of permitted development rights by submitting documentation in support of Article 4 direction with regard to creating HMOs. Well, anyone who has read that agenda will be able to see that the Cabinet has already asked that. In fact, the Cabinet asked that to happen in late March, and that's included at paragraph 4.4 of that particular agenda item. And therefore, the first element to the amendment is to change that, which is absolutely necessary to change. And the reason for that is because we would ask that Council notes that Cabinet has already instructed that to happen. The second thing that we should do with all motions, I would argue, is link it to our corporate strategy. Our corporate strategy was adopted by all members here back in 2023. And in there, we have a priority, and that is to improve housing options for local people. And I emphasize the word local. We have had instances over previous weeks in which we have seen houses in this borough not be prioritised for local people because of the actions of the government. Now, Article 4 directions are an effective deterrent here that we should use to this very current crisis that we are facing. And that is that we can use Article 4 directions to ensure that local residents and residents with a local housing need are prioritised over illegal immigrants. And thirdly, given that national planning policy advises that Article 4 directions be applied in a measured and targeted way, it is very difficult for us to propose Article 4 that covers the entire borough. And again, this is articulated in the Housing and Planning Scrutiny Select Committee paper that was published yesterday for consideration at its meeting next week. And therefore, we would suggest that any Article 4 direction be focused on wards where there are live issues with HMOs, particularly asylum accommodation, and also where local members are supportive. We would suggest that the second and third part of the motion become the fourth and the fifth part of the motion. The second part is simply in relation to bringing this forward at the earliest opportunity, which we would absolutely agree with. And the fifth part simply authorises the Director of Central Services and Deputy Chief Executive to submit the relevant documentation, which clearly is going to be necessary. Thank you, Your Worship, and I'd ask for if there's a seconder to the amendment.
Robin, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to second that motion, please, and reserve the right to reply.
Anna?
Yes. I can see that the Leader of the Council has some very big feelings about this, both seeming to want to agree and disagree with me, which must be a bit of a conflict. I'd just like to pick up again that we're not talking about illegal immigrants. We are talking about asylum seekers. And when we are in a public forum, we need to be careful and precise with our use of language and not use language to stoke division and fear. Secondly, we are talking about HMOs not solely in this context. We're talking about ensuring that families who are struggling across the borough to find adequate housing are not finding it more difficult than they need. So whilst I appreciate the passion that the leader spoke with, I would like to temper that with a more measured tone and not whip people up into a frenzy of fear and division when there really is no need. Thank you.
It will be no surprise at all that I find it really distasteful to see point 2 there, which specifically talks again about illegal immigrants. This motion is not about targeting individuals. It's not about suggesting that one home can solve all the problems of finding accommodation in our borough. All it's trying to do is to say, let's give ourselves some ability to look at these things and see if they seem sensible. I cannot possibly agree with the wording in point 2 there. I think it's divisive. You can snigger as many times as you like about asylum seekers. This is wrong, wrong, wrong. I cannot support it.
Good.
Yeah, I'm yet again disappointed to be in this chamber and to hear kind of language from our leader that is completely inappropriate. There's no such thing as an illegal immigrant. We're talking about asylum seekers. I'd also remind Councillor Rhodes that actually, if he wants to speak, if he wants to take part in a debate, actually put your hand up and wait to be called rather than guffaw and interrupt. Nobody on this side of the chamber, or I believe the other side of the chamber, finds any of this remotely amusing. I think that the in two, removing the second part of that completely to remove Article 4 directions are an effective deterrent to prevent illegal immigrants accessing homes ahead of residents with a local need. That needs to go completely. Are we really stooping so low that we're hunting for right-wing votes? We're hunting for reform votes in this manner, that you'd stoop this low. We've already had one mention of a debate, not hate, in this chamber tonight, and I'm going to mention it again. We all have a responsibility to use temperate language and to calm emotions, please. So I would like to offer an amendment to this amendment to remove the words that I've had. Otherwise, I should be voting against this.
We're talking about an amendment already, so we need to vote on that first. Councillor Bridge.
I'd like to support my colleagues in the Green Party. I think it's particularly disappointing that the leader of the council has once again sought to use illegal immigrants to try and make some political point here. The motion originally was about giving this council the opportunity to look at HMOs in a more measured way and ensure that they are appropriate to local areas and communities, and I think that's understandable, and I would support that. I certainly can't support targeting illegal immigrants in inverted commas when, as was pointed out, we're talking about asylum seekers. And if the leader of this council is so concerned about reserving properties for local people, then what steps will this council take to prevent people moving from outside the borough and taking homes from local people in need as well? I'm surprised that a political party that supports free market economics seems to throw that out of the window when we're talking about private landlords and private owners seeking to make the best use of their property. I find this appalling, frankly. I'm sorry.
Councillor Chapman.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be supporting my leader, and I'm sure this bench stand up for the silent majority, those who do what's right and play by the rules and pay their fair share.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to be very tempered and, legal asylum seekers, I've not got a problem with that at all. I've just thought I'd temper that terminology straight away. I think the legal side of it is, I think, where the problem is, and the reason this is all flared up is mainly because of the government administration and how they're dispersing the current. This is a problem actually. We don't know what they are, whether they're legal asylum seekers or illegal asylum seekers. That's a problem, but it's dispersing. It's dispersing. It's the way they're dispersing those asylum seekers from their current properties is, I think, the problem here. What confuses me is that only last full council 19 days ago, we had the Green Party in support of freedom as such in dispersing asylum seekers, and we don't know whether they're illegal or legal. That's what confuses me at the moment, is that 19 days ago they were fully talking against their leader in his concerns about the way the current government were planning to disperse those people. And for me, it's more about not knowing what's happening, not knowing whether they're illegal or legal. In fact, completely in the dark about how this is coming about. So, and that's why Cabinet raised these concerns, and indeed, we have a report coming to Housing and Planning next week. So, the motion that's been put forward is sort of out of date already, I'm afraid, because we've sort of already done all the work. You're just a little bit behind. And how I can't fathom out the U-turn in your approach from only 19 days ago when you were welcoming this approach by the government and how they were going to disperse current illegal or legal asylum seekers. I just can't work it out. And then there were also comments made. I think how this links as well into the corporate strategy is that obviously we do have a duty of care to our own residents. That's what we're here for. And this is where the problems occur, because when you get a government now seeking appropriate accommodation on this kind of scale, and we're talking quite a large scale here, that upsets supply and demand. That's a problem. And so it puts Tunbridge and Moorling sadly on the back foot when we're trying to find accommodation to suit our own TA needs. That's the problem. We're fighting against or competing against a government that's got a bottomless purse stroke wallet. And we all know we're not going to win against that. It also means that when we do find appropriate properties, we're looking over our shoulders as to when the government is going to come along and gazump us. This is what it's all about, really. It's nothing about, being controversially against any certain people, but it's how this affects our communities, how it affects how Tunbridge and Moorling operates to actually secure TA accommodation and properties for our own residents. That's all it's about. So the motion that the amendment that we've put forward is based on the fact that we don't want to delay this. The motion that you've been put forward will delay it because we've already done the work. It's housing and planning has an agenda item on it now. Papers being written, reports being done, and we can move forward at pace now to basically make this whole operation by the government more transparent. And I think residents will certainly support our way forward on this. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I absolutely support the idea of this Article 4 direction for HMOs for local need. I will not support the wording of illegal immigrants. This is too much like Reform Party and Tommy Robinson and going down that road. Let us not go there. We're better people than that. Thank you.
Councillor McDermott.
Thank you, Your Worship. We heard from Councillor Bridge about free market economics. I'm not really sure what the government using taxpayers' money to pay contractors to buy houses that are desperately needed by local people and thus drive the demand and the price of those houses up has to do with free market economics. I'd also just like to comment on Councillor Hood's remarks about responsibility. Well, perhaps we do have a responsibility to use tempered language, but first and foremost, we have a responsibility to represent the interests of our residents and to serve them. And I'm sorry, there is no one in this room who would not have serious concerns if a house full of whatever you'd like to call them, illegal immigrants, asylum seekers, people who have crossed the channel from France are not morally asylum seekers, but that is not the point. Anyone in this room would have concerns if a house like that was going to be put next door to them. It's easy to sit here and talk politics, but that is the reality of the situation. Thank you.
Councillor Hoskins.
Number one, I would not have concerns if a house like that was put next door to me. I would welcome them and help them to integrate and be happy with that situation. Also, I would like to point out, if you look at the statistics, illegal migrants, the vast, huge majority of them are people who've come over on visas and have outstayed the visa and are not getting, not renewing their visa. Those are the illegal migrants. So please, can we remove that language? Thank you.
Councillor Hickmott.
I think this is very disappointing. I thought we were a local council, didn't know we were a government body. Matt talked about local people need housing. Yes, I agree. I still keep banging on about when we get these massive housing developments, we don't get enough social housing out of them. That's our responsibility. That's where we failed. This is a planning thing. We don't tell developers, oh, you've got to have this sort of person or that sort of person. It's up to the developers. The only way we ought to be getting involved really is if it's changing the area that we're living in. If you're getting too many HMOs, it destroys the neighbourhood and it changes the character of the area. That's what we should be concentrating on. The who goes in there is not really for us.
Councillor Hartman.
Thanks, Your Worship. Robin, in his comments a few moments ago, mentioned hypocrisy. I noticed that a number of people on this side were shaking their heads. And I just want to remind you that in the leader's reply last 2 weeks ago, Lee said, and I'm going to quote, if somebody that owns a house decides to sell it to the Home Office to make it into an HMO, that's their decision. And the question really is, how do you square the circle that you are now actually taking away the right to turn a house into an HMO? Impossible.
It's a point of order. When a member's not in the chamber, I think it's entirely inappropriate to name the member in that way. And I think, and as she's not here to correct the point being made.
Councillor Hood, that's not a point of order.
Well, as a point of clarification, as my colleague isn't here, is that there's two completely different things to hear.
Excuse me, point of order. This isn't a point of order.
Councillor Banks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I must admit, I've had some unsolicited advice from this council leader when it came to planning advice to residents from the point of view to really be very careful to make sure that we don't actually use inflammatory language or basically raise people's aspirations as to what we could or what we couldn't do. And I think it's a shame that the leader didn't actually take note of his own advice, because I think the way that he's phrased using the term illegal in this debate has dive-bombed the whole thing. And I think it really is an own goal. I think it's appalling. I think the whole thing is just for clarification. I think the whole thing is the Refugee Convention 1951 basically says that people who seek basic asylum are not illegal. And I think just to introduce that into this debate is wrong. And I think the whole thing is, I think it's a situation we're going to spend a lot of time batting this backwards and forwards. The whole idea of the motion was a good idea. It was a good idea from the point of view of having some control of the amount of HMOs in a street, in a district, is a good idea, but it's been completely hijacked. And I think it's a shame, because I think there are other borough councils around, basically, that have got a better system than we have. Why, oh why, oh why do you want to actually do an audition for the Reform Party and introduce this kind of language, Matt? I really can't understand it.
Councillor King.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to redirect people's attention that both the original motion and the amended motion both asked the council to give further consideration to the use of Article 4 for the management of HMOs of whatever size. And that's exactly what's being done on the 19th. The officers will be producing a report to HMP, and we will be considering in some detail how best that mechanism can be applied. So the spirit of both motions is being exercised and already in the course of being dealt with. I just want to redirect people to understand that where we may talk about the use of language and what have you, the actual use of this mechanism is agreed fundamentally as a good direction to go in, and we will be doing that on the 19th. Thank you.
Okay, so we have an amendment and we have a seconder. So can we vote on that, please? Those in favour? Those against? That's 21 in favour, 19 against and no abstentions. So the amendment is carried. So now, sorry, Matt, do you
Yes, thank you. Just before we vote on the substantive, there were lots of questions of me in the discussion on the amendment. So with your permission, as you've got no other speakers and as the mover of the amendment, I will, you're waving at me, James. Okay, good. Okay, I thought you were being particularly friendly. Okay, so Councillor Coates is most concerned about my language tonight. Apparently, I'm not allowed to use the word ridiculous. Well, I'm going to use two words, incredibly ridiculous, to describe why this motion has been brought forward. Ultimately, I'm not going to take any lectures about language from someone who's in a party whose leader thinks that they can hypnotise women to get bigger breasts. That's the joke of the party in here. It's not our party. Ultimately, we had a discussion 3 weeks ago in this very council chamber in which we chose and essentially to make very clear to the Home Office where we are in relation to HMOs. It was made clear that we would progress this work. That's on the Housing and Planning Committee agenda, as Dennis said. It is clearly politically motivated as to why this has come back. Maybe this is Councillor Cope's audition to try and be a Green Party candidate for parliamentary selection again. Who knows? But it's not for me to speculate. Ultimately, we have got an issue here, a very live issue in our borough. We have to tackle that. The motion allows us to link this to the corporate strategy. It also allows us to proceed with the work that is already in train. And therefore, I'm pleased that the amendment was supported. I'd hope now it's a substantive, we can support that too. And as Dennis King said, this will be debated at the Housing and Planning Scrutiny Select Committee next week. Thank you.
Councillor Clokey.
I'd just like to say I agree with all the other points that have been made about the language in this, and therefore I would like to propose a motion to the an amendment to the motion as amended to delete after effective up to residents exclusive and replace it with mechanism to prioritise. So the new text would read article directions are an effective mechanism to prioritise residents with a local need.
Do you have a seconder? The Hood seconds. Does anybody want to speak to this amendment? Councillor Boult.
I consider it completely unnecessary for the reasons that I've just set out, so I'll be voting against.
Okay, shall we vote? Oh, the Hood.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much for Councillor Clokey for bringing this amendment forward, because I think that would satisfy most of us. I utterly reject the comments of the leader. I find it really so disappointing that we've had a motion here which was brought in good faith to bring us in line with other councils in Kent, which have got the very similar Article 4 directions, and to see this politicised in this manner, and the portrayal that we have that there's something happening in Tunbridge and Malling, which we should be fearful of when we have the sum total last year of 6 asylum seekers in accommodation in our borough is just shameful. So I absolutely endorse this, because I think it would make it fit for purpose.
If there are no other speakers, Councillor Cope has the right to reply.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to really dignify some of the more absurd points. I would like to thank Councillor Clokey for his amendment, which goes back to the spirit of what I was proposing in the first place, which is not about asylum seekers. I know some of the Cabinet seem to be absolutely astonished that in 19 days I could be speaking about something that could tenuously be linked and yet is not. I'm not here as an audition, as I think our leader suggested, for the parliamentary candidate of the Green Party, but I am here to make a political point, because this is literally a political arena. This is local politics. So it would be extraordinary if I wasn't doing something political. But I would like to say that I support Councillor Clokey's amendment, because, as I say, it fits with the spirit of what I was intending all along, which is to make sure that the housing opportunities are appropriate and meeting the needs of the people in the borough. Thank you.
Councillor Banks.
A quick point just before we move on. I think Councillor Clokey's change to the motion is a good one. We seem to be having councillors leaving the chamber, which I've never seen before. And I think this would be quite a good opportunity to just maybe de-escalate. And it's something that perhaps we could just de-escalate and just pass the motion as suggested by Councillor Clokey. I think it would be a good thing all round if it was, because I think I think the direction that we've travelled, which I had a feeling we were going to travel, is not a good direction for us in this chamber. So I would suggest strongly that we support Councillor Clokey's motion.
Okay, we're going to go to the vote now on Councillor Clokey's amendment. So those in favour? Those against? Okay, in favour was 18, against is 21, no abstain. The amendment has been lost. So now we're back to the substantive amendment. If we can all vote on that, please. Those in favour? Those against? So that's 21 in favour, 18 against, no abstentions. The amendment has been passed. Okay, agenda item 20. I ask Council to authorise the common seal of the Council to be affixed to any contract, minute, notice or other document requiring the same. Is that agreed? I therefore close the meeting at 10:03 p.m. and invite councillors, honorary freemen, aldermen and officers to put politics behind them and join me in the committee room for some light refreshments. Thank you.